Hello, I'm Citrus, and thanks to Zen Plus, you're looking at the Master Grade XS Gundam. Zen Plus is a new Zen market service that connects you directly with Japanese retailers for all kinds of stuff, not just Gunpla. There's no fee to purchase on Zen Plus, and you receive 3% cash back on every item, which you can spend on future Zen Plus or Zen Market orders. There's a decent selection of limited edition and web exclusive Gunpla on Zen Plus right now at pretty reasonable prices, and new things are added all the time. For retailers outside of Zen Plus, like the premium Bandai web shop, you can use the Zen Market shopping service. All you pay is a 300 yen fee per item, the item price, and shipping. Altogether, the prices are much cheaper than just about every other Japanese shopping service. I've used Zen Market for a while now, and for especially popular releases, they've actually been cheaper than secondhand shops like Mandrake. Not having to keep checking for new listings is also pretty nice. Anyway, as a token of thanks, Zen Plus wanted to send me something to review for them, so I chose this. This box is really big. I'd show you if I had the desk space, but this is about 2 inches wider and an inch taller than the Perfect Grade RX-78-2 box. By the way, if you plan on buying one of these, I highly recommend buying one from a retailer in your country, because EMS shipping for this kit to America costs a hefty 6,600 yen. Shipping it from Japan on your own will almost certainly offset any discounts from the 1,200 yen box price. For example, if you live in the US, you're looking at paying over $150 to import one. Or you can buy this from Newtype with coupon code CITRUS for about $125 and not pay shipping at all. Flipping through the first few pages of the manual, I'm happy to see there will be fewer leftovers than I expected. Skipping to the middle, we see some story text and mechanical descriptions. I believe this might be the first piece of Gundam Sentinel canon to ever be officially published in English. Most of the back half of the manual contains instructions for transforming this kit into its 3 alternate modes, and you can bet we're going to do all of them. About a third of the plates are new. Everything else is recycled from the old Master Grade XS. In fact, we actually get almost all of the old parts, except for the O plates, which contain parts for the old backpack, and the yellow section of the A plate, which were parts for the old head. But on the bright side, we do get the choice to pretty much pick and choose which parts of the kit we want to upgrade, and as a reviewer, it's much easier for me to show you the differences between the old and new parts side by side without having to borrow someone else's pictures, or worse, buying and building the old kit all over again. Altogether, there are over 30-something plates in the box. We're just flipping through them all really quickly, since it's not super interesting to look at every single one in detail. But the gist is this. All the old plates that were ABS are still ABS here. This was a great decision on Bandai's part, because given the massive size and weight of the finished XS, the extra strength can't hurt. Bandai has tried replacing ABS from older kits with soft polystyrene in newer releases, which they did with the Sinanju Steinberg Ka and the animation version Sinanju, and the results weren't great. Anyone who's seen a broken Sinanju waist joint knows what I'm talking about. I also imagine the 27 screws that this kit needs to stay together will almost certainly destroy a polystyrene frame over time. The casting quality is still decent. You can easily tell which parts were sculpted a year ago or 15 years ago. In typical 2003 fashion, the frame parts have a ton of sculpted detail but not much moving detail, like working pistons or sliding armor. Lots of little molded pipes and bolts to paint up, if you're into that. The new parts seem to follow this ethos as well. Once we put this whole thing together, I think the overall look will still be pretty cohesive. The only marking seals we get this time are clear stickers. No dry transfers are included. I didn't count exactly, but there seems to be enough stickers for both the S Gundam and the XS equipment. The inclusion of these solid square designs adds a kind of retro feel. As usual, we're rolling into the build now, but the rest of the video will be a little different. Since this kit has 3 alternate modes, we'll skip the final assembly and start with the G Attacker and G Bomber modes right after the build. We'll transform and combine them into the S Gundam, then we'll throw on the extra parts to form the XS, and finally end with a transformation into the magnificent G Cruiser. Let's start with the G Bomber, which is the more straightforward half of the S Gundam. If I pick it up and shake it, you'll notice that nothing rattles. Every part of this mobile armor either clicks or lock into another part, so nothing flops around. You have the option to move the hips so that the legs are locked further out from the body, but I think the compact position looks better overall. If we turn this upside down, you can see that leaving the legs in the narrow MS position allows the support arm to rest neatly in the cavity left behind by the knee joint. While the G-Bomber still looks like a flying pair of legs, I really like its tidy packaging, and if I squint from a distance, the aircraft motif looks a little bit more convincing. But there's definitely no mistaking what the G Attacker is supposed to be. This design looks like it came straight from an arcade shooter like Gradius or Raystorm. Just like with the G Bomber, if I give this a shake, you'll also hear no rattling. Everything is held together with some fairly precise locks and clips. You have the option to rotate the wing pods up and down slightly to change how you'd like to display the mobile armor. Both the G Attacker and G Bomber deviate somewhat from Katoki Hajime's original line art. Even so, of all the mobile suits that split in half to transform, the S Gundam is my favorite, because both halves transform into pretty good looking fighter crafts. My only disappointment is that despite shoving nearly 10 runners worth of new parts in the box, Bandai didn't give us any new adapters to display the G Attacker and G Bomber on an action base. It's a shame because the old parts included a little arm for displaying the core fighter in the air. It would have been really nice to have an easy way to display all three fighters together. Anyway, let's put all the pieces together now to form the S Gundam. Starting with the G Bomber, the transformation is pretty simple and stress-free. There's nothing in particular for us to watch out for. And in just a few steps, we're all done with the bottom half of the Gundam. The G Attacker is a bit trickier. When we're pulling the fuselage down, we need to make sure that the head antenna are free. These parts used to be soft plastic on the old kit, but they're hard plastic now, so they can easily break if they snag on anything. For the arms, the manual tells us to remove them completely and then put them back on. But if we're very careful, we can avoid that by transforming the arms fully in their current position, and then slowly rotate the locking pegs out of the rear thruster pods. This will save some wear on the arm polycap, which is important if you intend to transform this kit multiple times. After that, just make sure the antenna portion of the head doesn't fall apart while you're raising the head out of the chest cavity. Again, the old design always held the big V's in place, but now they're free to fall out when they're pulled forward. To join the top and bottom, we connect two pegs together. The core fighter is actually unnecessary to stand up the Gundam, and this connection alone is quite strong. To prevent damage, the core fighter itself doesn't plug into anything very tightly. The slot on top of the folded core fighter connects to a peg under the neck and supports the head from inadvertently retracting into the chest. You can probably tell by now that the S Gundam, by design, doesn't have a waist joint. Now we're all done. You can see the S Gundam is very tall compared to a typical 1/100 scale Gundam. We'll put on the XS parts next, but even at this stage, I'm very satisfied with this kit. Its large size, solid feel, and menacing design gives it a kind of power that many modern MGs don't have anymore. Newer kits may be more detailed, but they're also more fragile, while this is complex, yet it's still easy to handle. There's no comparison between this kit and a recent Verka. No amount of tricky joints and armor gimmicks can replace the density of old school ABS and metal screws. Anyway, enough nostalgia. Equipping the XS parts doesn't require much disassembly in general. We simply need to remove the rear thrusters, beam smart gun, and support arm. All the new parts simply pop into place. Unfortunately, everything changes for the legs, which we need to disassemble completely below the knee. Replacing the knee pylons is the biggest pain. It's very difficult to remove the parts safely. I think Bandai could have improved the design here slightly, but I don't disagree with their choice to leave it alone and retain the strength of the original knee joint. After reassembling all the parts, we complete the XS Gundam conversion. Take care not to tighten the thruster screws too much. Stripping the plastic will cause major problems for the G Cruiser transformation later on. Here's another size comparison. Although the XS doesn't gain any height, it definitely has an even larger presence than the S Gundam. The manual once again instructs us to set the hips in the wider position, but I still prefer the narrower stance. Moving the hips out also shifts them slightly forwards, which pushes the standing center of gravity backwards. Given the heavier rear thrusters of the XS, this makes the kit more difficult to stand up. But it absolutely does stand, all thanks to the tight, screw-down joints in the knees and ankles. This is how screws are meant to be used. I'm looking at you, MG GP03. Of course, for any long-term display, using the included stand is a must. It'd be great if the bottom of the stand could store the beam saber effects and incom wires, but you can easily seal them in a bag and place it underneath. This way, all of the kit's accessories can be conveniently kept in one place for easy access. For gimmicks, we can slide apart the shoulders and open the cockpits. I think it's kind of funny that the lower hatch cannot open unless the upper hatch is open first. We can also attach the wires to the incoms, but I can't make the wires completely straight, so I don't think they look super convincing. Altogether, despite the XS's imposing looks, I prefer the S Gundam form. Its compact size makes it much easier to pose and display. At this point, I'm not even sure if it's fair to compare this to the Metal Robot Spirits XS. My sense of accomplishment after building this beast completely overshadows any deficiencies it may have against the action figure. I'll concede that the Metal Robot Spirits has more mechanical details, better articulation, and a fancy camo paint job, but I almost don't care. The MG's bigger size commands more attention, and the fact that I built it reminds me of the joy of assembly every time I see it. I added a few touches of paint here and there to mimic the look of the Metal Robot Spirits, and I think my results came pretty close to the overall feeling of the action figure, at least from a distance anyway. For me, the model kit delivers more value any day. And now we move on to the anti-Asmer portion of this review, the G Cruiser transformation. But the only essential separations are removing the tanks and reattaching the top half of the body in a different position. There's no need to take off the legs. The arms can technically stay on as well, but just to be safe and to give myself a little bit more room, I'll remove them to transform separately. Anecdotally, we know that many an XS have perished during the Great G Cruiser transformation, so let's first say a quick prayer to Bandai, Sunrise, and the Kami of Gunpla. Here goes nothing. And that's the G Cruiser. The lowest stand angle is still too steep for my liking, but the base is sturdy enough that I can prop it up from the rear without upsetting the balance of the overall display. In this position, the pitch of the G Cruiser is roughly level, which makes it look more appealing. I also like to fold out the lower wings to give the mobile armor a bit more dimension. Unless you have a deep shelf, I think the G Cruiser is best shown from the side. This angle really shows off the immense mass and volume of the G Cruiser. For long-term display, I recommend using an adjustable plate stand like this one to keep the base at an angle. They're fairly cheap, this is $1.50 from Daiso, and the rubber coating provides extra grip. I suppose the overall shape of the G Cruiser doesn't look too bad, but behind all the fussy tabs and tricky hinges, it's not too special. You can see what I mean when I stand it up vertically. The G Cruiser is basically the XS Gundam hunched over slightly, with its legs bent around and its arms reaching straight up. The rear thrusters barely move from their MS position. Compared to the S Gundam's G Attacker and G Bomber modes, the G Cruiser isn't a very inspired design. I thoroughly enjoyed experiencing the engineering through transforming each section. I just wish the G Cruiser could have pulled it all together in a slightly more elegant form. The process actually wasn't too complicated. What makes it terrifying is the fact that all the moving parts are enormous and they're all held together by very tiny pieces. Fortunately, ABS is a strong material, so there's nothing to fear as long as your motions are careful and deliberate. This is one of the most surprising kits I've built in years. So much thought and care went into designing this that I kind of regret not building the old MG sooner. It's almost hard to believe that this kit is nearly 20 years old. Plenty of modern transforming MGs can't even come close in solidity and complexity. I don't really think this kit deserves the bad rap it's had for being a so-called flimsy brick. It poses well and holds itself together, not bad at all for a big beast from 2002. In fact, after building this kit, I'm excited to try out some more kits from back then to see for myself if Bandai put this much effort into everything else. As far as this refresh goes, I'm not sure if Bandai gave it their best shot. To be fair, the improvements are great. They add a lot of visual flair without conflicting with the traditional design. But are these upgrades worth the extra 4,000 yen over the old XS? I can't really say. And Bandai is still printing the old MG as of this video, so it's not like this is your only option. The value you'll get out of the new parts depend on what kind of modeler you are. For me, I don't have the skill to replicate all of the new details or the patience to paint all the missing trims properly, so the fresh look is worth the premium. On the other hand, if you're handy with your tools and paints, the old kit is definitely the way to go. 4,000 yen can pay for a lot of supplies or even a couple more kits. And if you prefer the S Gundam like I do, you can even pick up the old MG S Gundam for only half the price of this. In any case, whether you go for this kit or an old one, be prepared for a big project. I expected to spend maybe 2 weeks putting this together, but it dragged out over a month. I really appreciate your patience while I did my best to finish this build, and especially the patience of Zen Plus, who provided this kit for me to share with you all. Whenever the need arises, click over to Zen Plus for all kinds of neat Japanese goods like candy, conveniences, and rare Gundam oddities. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.